Welcome to Stories Pulse. In today's powerful story, we witness a soldier who faces an unexpected challenge aboard a flight. A moment that turns into an emotional journey of understanding, respect, and personal growth. A tale that reminds us of the importance of kindness and the unexpected ways we can learn from one another. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss a new adventure. Share this with your friends and family, and let's spread these meaningful messages. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the story? How would you have responded? Thank you for being part of Stories Pulse. Stay tuned for more unforgettable tales. Sergeant Emma Parker trudged through the bustling terminal of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta, her duffel bag slung heavily over one shoulder. The weight of months spent overseas hung on her like the gear she carried, heavy, worn, and unrelenting. Her green uniform, now faded and creased from countless days of wear, marked her as a soldier. Someone who had seen and endured more than most of the passengers she passed by. Yet today, all she wanted was to get home, sink into the comfort of her own bed, and let the exhaustion finally take over. As she approached the gate, Emma glanced at her boarding pass, surprised to see the bold letters marking her seat, 2B, First Class. It was unexpected, and she wondered if it was a mistake. But as she stepped onto the plane, the flight attendant at the door smiled warmly at her. "Welcome aboard, Sergeant Parker," she said, glancing at Emma's uniform. "Thank you for your service." Emma nodded in acknowledgement, offering a faint smile as she moved forward into the plush, spacious seating area. It felt strange to be there amidst passengers in business suits and elegant dresses, but she had learned to take the small comforts when they came. Settling into the wide seat, she let out a small sigh, allowing herself to relax for the first time in what felt like ages. But her moment of peace was shattered when a man appeared in the aisle beside her. He was tall with slick-back gray hair and a crisp suit that screamed wealth and privilege. The look he gave Emma was one of irritation and disbelief. "Excuse me," he said sharply, his voice laced with annoyance. "I believe you're in the wrong seat." Emma looked up at him, momentarily confused. "I don't think so," she replied, showing him her boarding pass. "This is 2B. It's my seat." He leaned in closer, scrutinizing her pass with a sneer. "This must be some kind of mistake," he muttered, his tone dripping with condescension. "You're military. You should be back in coach." The words hit Emma like a slap. She had dealt with prejudice before, subtle and overt, but it never got easier. Her stomach tightened, and a flush of heat rose to her cheeks. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, keeping her voice steady, "but this is the seat assigned to me." The man scoffed, shaking his head as if the very idea was absurd. "Unbelievable," he muttered under his breath, glancing around as if expecting the other passengers to join him in his disbelief. "You don't belong here." For a moment, Emma considered offering to switch seats, anything to avoid the scene that was unfolding. She could feel the eyes of the other passengers on her, some curious, others judgmental. The tension was thick, pressing down on her as she struggled to find the right response. Before she could say anything, a flight attendant appeared at the man's side, her expression professional but firm. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her tone polite but leaving no room for argument. The man quickly explained the situation, his voice rising slightly as he gestured toward Emma. But the flight attendant simply smiled and nodded. "Sergeant Parker," she said, turning to Emma, "your seat is indeed in first class. Thank you for your service." She then looked at the man, her smile never faltering. "Sir, your seat is 4C, just a few rows back." The man's face flushed red, his embarrassment evident as he realized he was not going to win this battle. Without another word, he huffed and stalked off down the aisle, leaving Emma to sink back into her seat, a mixture of relief and lingering frustration swirling inside her. As the plane filled up and the flight attendants prepared for takeoff, Emma tried to shake off the incident, but it clung to her like a shadow. Even as the plane soared above the clouds, her mind lingered on the exchange. The man's words echoed in her ears, bitter and haunting. She had faced much worse in her time in the military. Long, grueling days in the field, nights spent in the cold, the weight of responsibility as she led her unit through treacherous terrain. She had lost friends, seen lives shattered, and summoned strength from places she didn't know existed, just to keep moving forward. Yet through it all, she had carried a deep sense of pride in her service, knowing she was part of something bigger, something that protected the very freedoms others took for granted. But here, in the safety of a civilian airplane, thousands of feet above the ground, she was reminded that no matter what she had done, no matter how much she had sacrificed, some people would never see her as deserving of the same respect they gave others. The man's sneer, his dismissive tone, it all brought back memories of the prejudice she had encountered throughout her life. The sting of being judged not for her actions, but for what she appeared to be in the eyes of someone who didn't know her and didn't care to. Emma clenched her fists, the anger simmering beneath the surface. She knew she had done nothing wrong, that she had every right to be in that seat, but the thought that someone could so easily dismiss her, that they could belittle her service, made her blood boil. She had fought for people like him, for everyone, so they could enjoy their lives in peace. And yet that fact seemed to mean nothing to him. As she sat there, stewing in frustration, something inside her shifted. She couldn't let this go. She couldn't let him think that his behavior was acceptable. She had faced down worse than his sneers and dismissive attitude, and she wasn't about to let him walk away thinking he had the right to treat her or anyone else like that. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small notepad and pen. As the plane dipped slightly, she began to write, her hand moving quickly, the words flowing like they had been waiting to be released. Dear Sir, I understand that there may have been a misunderstanding earlier, and I wanted to take a moment to address it. I am proud to serve my country and to have had the opportunity to protect the freedoms we all enjoy. I have seen the cost of those freedoms firsthand, and I carry with me the memories of those who did not make it home. I hope that one day we can all see each other not for our differences, but for our shared humanity. We are all more alike than we are different, and kindness is something we can all afford to show one another. Sincerely, Sergeant Emma Parker. She folded the note carefully, her heart pounding with a mix of resolve and anxiety. There was no guarantee the man would read it, let alone understand the message she was trying to convey. But she had to try. This was her way of standing up, not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been made to feel less than because of someone else's ignorance or prejudice. Emma signaled for the flight attendant, who approached with a warm smile. Could you do me a favor? Emma asked, holding out the note. Could you please deliver this to the man in seat 4C? The attendant took the note, glancing at it briefly before nodding. Of course, Sergeant Parker. Emma watched as the flight attendant made her way down the aisle, handing the note to Greg Foster. He took it, looking surprised as he opened the small piece of paper. Emma couldn't see his face clearly, but she noticed the way his posture stiffened, the way his head dipped as he read her words. For the rest of the flight, Greg remained silent, his gaze fixed on the note in his hands. Emma couldn't tell what he was thinking, and she didn't expect a response. But there was peace in knowing that she had spoken her truth, that she had taken a stand against the small, insidious injustices that often went unchallenged. As the plane touched down at Washington Dulles International Airport, the jolt of the landing gear meeting the tarmac shook Emma from her thoughts. She had spent the rest of the flight in silence, the note fading into the background of her mind as the reality of returning home loomed ahead. The cabin lights flickered on, and the usual bustle of passengers preparing to disembark began. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt, gathering her belongings when she noticed a shadow fall over her. Looking up, she saw Greg standing beside her seat. His expression was markedly different from the one he had worn earlier. Sergeant Parker, he began, his voice softer than before, almost hesitant. Emma paused, waiting for him to continue. I wanted to thank you for the note, he said. It really made me think. Emma nodded slightly, unsure of what to say. The tension that had gripped her during their earlier encounter had dissipated, replaced by something more sincere. Greg took a deep breath, as if struggling to find the right words. I was out of line earlier, he admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor. I made assumptions about you that were unfair and based on my own issues. The truth is, I lost my brother in Afghanistan a few years ago.